Great. I want to talk about what happened today. When I visited New Beginnings. I have so many feelings over that. So, Three Springs New Beginnings was bought out by Sequel, and so it was Sequel Owens Crossroads. It was shut down for abuse when it was under the name Sequel Owens Crossroads. I know that, and there were actually news stories about it, so it's comforting to know that there's proof that I'm not crazy in believing it was abusive, because some of the things listed in some of the news stories I read about the Sequel Owens Crossroads were things that happened oftentimes when I was there. Usually most of the bad things happened between the time that the front office staff left and when third shift staff came in. So it was like usually in the afternoonish time. That's usually when bad stuff happened. So I mean, it was validating seeing the news articles about it, that, yeah. So there was that. So basically, I stopped by Pathway today, I should back up and tell you. So it's reopened as Pathway of Madison County, same building. I went there today. It took a lot of bravery. I wasn't sure if I was gonna do this since I didn't end up coming to Alabama with other girls. It was just me, and I was hoping to have other girls with me to help with bravery. But, so front door was locked. You had to ring the doorbell. And I rang the doorbell, and I had my high school diploma with me, and I was asking if they knew I told them that I graduated from high school there when it was Three Springs New Beginnings. I told them I was a former student, and I was asking them if they knew about how to get a high school transcript. I started out asking about that because I figured that would be easier to ask about first, because honestly, I know it's a really long shot, but I was hoping for records. But I didn't end up asking for that. So basically they said that they don't have any of the records from Sequel or Three Springs. That they are a different company that bought out the building and started a new program. And they kind of told me where like the Sequel office was. But I can't remember directions, and I couldn't pull it up on Google Maps, so I'm probably not getting high school transcript or records or anything. I'm just giving up on it. There's so many things. I don't know what to think. So there was a staff member that happened to be there that I thought looked familiar. And, after I left, after they told me, no, there's no, and told me where to go for high school transcript, I said, I thanked them and, went back to my car. So as I was, at my car starting to load stuff, put my, high school diploma, all that back in, and then I was gonna go around and put my wheelchair in. The staff member that I thought looked familiar came up to me at my car And she said I looked familiar too. She asked me my name, and oh my gosh, yeah, it was a staff member I knew from back when it was Three Springs New Beginnings. So many feelings. When I found out that, yeah, she was who I thought she was, and we knew each other, I started crying. I'm turning into a crybaby. Like, literally, I keep crying over stuff lately. Like, even when it's like tears of happiness, it's kind of a new thing, because I don't like crying in front of other people. I just don't. Yeah, so there was that. Yeah, so apparently I didn't realize that she was fairly new when I arrived there. I thought she'd just been there for ages. She was generally a third shift person. I think there were rare occasions that she was there in the afternoon, if I remember correctly. One thing that helped was she did say that, yes, certain staff were abusive. That certain staff, I was right in believing that some of what happened was abuse. And it helped hearing that from someone who was an adult, who was there at the same time I was there. It was really healing, to know that I'm not crazy. I was right in thinking that some things were abuse. I told her that, I don't have any hard feelings for, a lot of the lower level staff that were nice to us. I don't have hard feelings for the first family service worker that was in charge of my case for, most of the time that I was there. I don't have any hard feelings for the second family service worker that was in charge of my case, and I don't have any hard feelings for, there was like another family service worker that didn't work with me, but I think may have been in charge of other girls in my group at New Beginnings, but she left fairly quickly because I think she figured out, what was going on was abuse. The staff member I talked to remembered some abuse things I brought up with her that, I remembered. And, there was acknowledgement that, it wasn't good. I told her when I saw the news articles about Pathway that I was concerned because, I remembered that time, at New Beginnings when we had, our markers and coloring books taken away just because somebody tried to kill themselves with a hair tie. It's like, how is that related? It was like taking away from everybody one thing that we did to occupy ourselves, at various times, and she remembered that, so at least I'm not crazy in thinking something was off with that. I found out that she actually quit working at New Beginnings soon after I left because of the abuse. She knew it was abuse. She came back, sometime when Pathway, I think, first opened, and then left for a bit, and I guess she just came back again. I don't know what to think. because, like, I trust her because, especially because she acknowledged that things that happened when I was there were abuse. You know, she remembered it. But at the same time, I'm so confused. You know, I was told that Pathway was being run by a different company than the other Brighter Path programs here in Alabama. I was told, well, and it's confusing because their NPI number is registered under Brighter Path Alabama, so it's like, that's why I thought they were associated. Well, and plus, all the other Brighter Path programs used to be Three Springs programs as well. I mean, and they've all had abuse issues too, just like, you know, I don't know what to think, you know, like, I wish I knew how to look up, you know, more information about different companies. I wish I knew how to look up who's in charge, because I remember sometime last year being told that when Pathway opened, it was being run by the same people. But the problem is, the person who told me that was someone on the Troubled Teen Survivor Reddit thing, and I don't know their name. I don't know who they are. I mean, Reddit's a lot more anonymous, you know, than other social media. So I have no way of verifying who it was that told me that. I mean, I know it's a common tactic in the troubled teen industry. You know, when a place is closed for abuse, they set up a new company with a new name and, you know, change who is, you know, listed as in charge, you know, and change it to a different upper level person and then reopen. So I don't know what's going on. I have reached out to some other troubled teen survivors. There's a group I'm in of other troubled teen industry survivors who are activists now, and one of them is really good at research. I'm praying that they'll get back to me today. I'm just so torn about so many things, because one of the things I was gonna do while I was down here, so a couple months ago, when I saw articles about Pathway, on an impulse, I reached out to one of those news things and said, you know, I was there when it was Three Springs New Beginnings, and I'm willing to tell you about my experiences. Because, you know, I was like, if those girls are getting tortured in there, you know, if those girls are getting abused, I want to do something about it, you know? I don't want any kids to go through what I went through, especially since there are so many troubled teen industry programs all over the US that are still open and still abusing kids. You know, that was one of my biggest things for coming this way, along with, you know, visiting Paint Rock and all that, and doing whatever I needed to do to heal from the trauma I went through there. But there is a chance, you know, I told the news reporter what I found out today, that it sounds like, you know, that I was told that, you know, it's being run by Enterprise, and that the other Brighter Path, I was told that the other Brighter Path programs are being run by Sequel. I wish I hadn't said anything until I knew. I don't know what to think, but I'm hoping that I can figure out by the end of the day the truth about, the staff member said the girls in there are safe, and that, after the things that got Pathway in the news happened, the girls who did the things, I guess, were sent to somewhere else, and everything's been fine there since. She said the girls are safe and that, abuse isn't happening. I want to believe her because she's a good person. She was one of the few good staff, I want to trust her. It's just in the back of my mind, I'm remembering normal tactics used by the troubled teen industry. I'm remembering, the things I've learned recently over the past 2 years that, what they do with, changing company name, setting up a new company under a new name and all that. And I have that I'm worried about. And yeah, there's also, I don't know a lot about what goes on in there. I didn't ask questions about that, and I wish I had. I wish I had asked if the girls have access to open, unsupervised communication, so that if they're being abused, they can tell someone safely. I wish I had asked if they have access to being able to communicate with anyone they want, not just parent or guardian, because, I know for a lot of kids who get dumped in places like that if they were sent there by a parent, a lot of those parents are abusive. And to limit contact with everyone except for abusive parents is not okay, it's just not. That's not going to help. Especially if, the program's claiming to heal trauma, forcing a kid to only have communication with their parents and forcing communication, in general, just with them, that's problematic when it's not healthy. Yeah, I'm really reluctant to trust any troubled teen program because, to be honest, so far, I don't think I know of any that I would trust, knowing what I know about various companies that run these programs all over the US, knowing what I know about the abuse that happens in various programs owned by various companies, I would be really reluctant to trust. I don't know what to think. So, yeah. So that's where I'm at. Yeah. I'm hoping I can get to talk to the news reporter if, I hear back that yes, this is problematic, because, I don't want to lose the chance to help those kids if they need help, if they're being abused. And I also, if I can't talk about New Beginnings, I really hope, if I can't talk to the reporter, based on, helping with, raising awareness and trying to get that shut down, even if I don't go that route, you know, I'm hoping that I can still talk to the reporter, because there are so many more programs that are open in Alabama. Yes, Paint Rock is closed. Yes, New Beginnings has been bought out twice, and it's kind of up in the air who's running it, what's going on, whatever. But yeah, there's so many programs here in Alabama that are still open, still abusing kids. There was a kid that died at Brighter Path Cortland, and they're still open. And it's concerning to me that, those Brighter Path facilities are being run by Sequel, because Sequel owns the company up in, I think it was Michigan, that killed that foster kid. His name was Cornelius, I believe. Can't remember his last name. All because he threw a sandwich. They killed him. Staff literally, the video is horrible. But yeah, that's Sequel, and you can find news articles about that. It legit happened, I want to raise awareness about this stuff, because, I think it's horrible that there's still kids going through what I went through as a kid. There are troubled teen industry survivors that are as old as my parents. That was shocking to find out. Yeah, I have been part of a few support groups for troubled teen industry survivors, which have been really helpful, actually. But it was kind of surreal, seeing someone in there who was my parents' age. And the fact that the abuse has gone on in this country that long, it's a travesty. How has this been allowed to continue this long? Especially since the internet is a thing. Parents have no excuse now, if any parent that sends their kid into the troubled teen industry, especially with how easy it is now to Google and find abuse warnings about all the facilities, they should know better. And I'm sorry, but if somebody sends a kid into there these days, with Google and everything around, that's an abusive parent that, just doesn't care. You can't convince me otherwise, and there are alternatives, there's a whole list of them at unsilenced.org, a whole list of alternatives. But yeah, even if a kid has developed, unhealthy coping mechanisms, very rarely are these parents who dump kids in there, very rarely are these parents willing to look at themselves, because this stuff doesn't, happen in a vacuum. I think there needs to be family therapy first, with, parents, kid, and all that in a lot of cases, because, a lot of the people I was in there with came from very abusive homes. There was one person at New Beginnings that I knew that went through things that were just as bad as one of the foster kids that went through some pretty freaking horrible things, and yet she wasn't a foster kid. Sorry to be graphic, but her dad was raping her, that's how bad it was, and she wasn't taken out. Child Protective Services did nothing. And when she graduated from New Beginnings, and then after a little while in the group home that was right outside New Beginnings, she was sent home to that family. She begged to be in foster care. And I'm sorry, but that's not okay. Like, the fact that Three Springs New Beginnings knew about that abuse and sent her back to that, you know? Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of messed up stuff that really bothers me. Yeah, and I wish I knew more about what to do to help stop this stuff in this country. 'Cause it's not okay. It's not, you know? It's abuse, clear and simple, and I don't think most people are aware of how bad it is. I want to change that. I just don't know how. And I hate that I have limited energy because, you know, that's the thing that limits me too, you know? And it's ironic because the limited energy is because of all the chronic illnesses I've developed because of, you know, the trauma that I endured at Paint Rock and New Beginnings.